everyone, let me introduce myself to you. My name is Novia Hilda Octavia Manalu, with my ID number in my University of Trunojoyo Madura is 19031110009 and 5. Now I want to tell you about my text that under title is Business Dispute Resolution. This is my text about in my study that law and business ethics. Okay, I am a student in agricultural faculty that my study program is in agribusiness. Now that is my text. First is about the content. The content is number 1 is definition of business dispute. Second is case of dispute. And the third, alternative dispute resolution, or we call it with ADR. The fourth is international arbitration. And the last, the 5 is the sample case. Okay, what is the business dispute? The business dispute definition relates to any kind of disagreement between two businesses over the terms of an agreement signed by both parties involved. They can happen in any kind of business arrangement and are mostly inevitable over a company's lifetime. Okay, look this chart. This tells you about what is relation of business and company. So the business that we use at the company, it have the same goals that we call is activities carried out for profit or activities that have a monetary value. Now I'm gonna tell you about alternative dispute resolution. What are the types of dispute resolutions? So the business dispute resolutions is the kind of adjudicative or non-adjudicative. That adjudicative is we can parties of two parts. The first is court, and the second is arbitration. And what about non-adjudicative? Non-adjudicative, we can solve it with negotiation. But if this fail, if negotiation is failed, so we can use mediation or conciliation. Meanwhile, why the discussion occurs? So there are 3 reasons why the discussions on the company with the other company is occurs. The first is the two parts of the company have the different meaning, different view of the contract, and the second is the contract execution, and the last is this is very big troubles. If this is happen, the company or the parts may be against the law. So how the company has response to business discussion? First is they may be lumping it, avoidance, coercion, negotiation, have mediation, arbitration, adjudication. And the key success factor to use alternative dispute resolution is the dispute is still within reasonable limits, and the commitment of the parties is very big. And the last is sustainable relation bargaining position is balanced. We're going to negotiation, the part of non-adjudicative of alternative dispute resolution. One alternative dispute resolution method is negotiation. Negotiation is the most basic means of settling difference. While some parties may decide to negotiate between themselves in order to resolve disputes, often parties hire attorneys to help negotiate a fair deal. A negotiated agreement can become a contract and is legally enforceable. Negotiation has been defined as any form of direct or indirect communication, whereby parties who have opposing interests discuss the form of any joint action which they might take to manage and ultimately resolve the dispute between them. Negotiation is a voluntary process. No one is required to participate in negotiation should they not wish to do so. There is no need for resort to a third party neutral. This is important when none of the parties want to involve a third party in the process. This is can be example in the matters to be discussed of the dispute to be resolved be highly sensitive in nature. And unlike the outcomes of certain adjudicative process, for example, the courts, the outcome of a negotiation only binds those parties who were involved in the negotiation. So the agreement must not, of course, be contrary to the law. Negotiations may preserve and in some cases even enhance the relationship between the parties once agreement has been reached between them. That's why the negotiation is called to be non-adjudicative. The negotiation involves only the parties. The outcome of a negotiation is reached by the parties together without resort of a third party neutral. In this alternative dispute resolution, if this negotiation is failed, so that we can use a mediation. The goal of mediation is for a neutral third party to help disputant come to a consensus on their own, rather than imposing a solution. A professional mediator works with the conflicting sides to explore the interests underlying their positions. Mediation can be effective at allowing parties to vent their feelings and fully explore their grievance. Working with parties together and sometimes separately, mediators can try to help them hammer out a resolution that is sustainable, voluntary, and of course is non-binding. And then we can go to arbitration. The arbitration is the form of adjudicative of alternative dispute resolutions. Why arbitrations? Because the arbitration is have a kind of confidentially informal, relatively cheap and fast, decided by expert and flexible arbitration procedure law. Now I want to tell you about arbitration and the other point of view. So the arbitrations is the power to get things done according to wisdom. But if there is the impression that arbitration resolves disputes without regard to law, it's back then, because the wrong perception. So that arbitrations and the wrong perception, we can use that and we can confidently call that arbitration resolves disputes based on law. The kinds of arbitration is, the first is ad hoc with arbitration institutional. So the arbitration is first of all it began ad hoc and the last is arbitration institutional. And if the arbitration is happening national, we can use the continuous sustainable law for arbitration international. The characteristics of arbitration is the arbitrators listen as each side argues its case and present relevant evidence then renders a binding decision. And the characteristics for strength is arbitrators hand down decisions that are usually confidential and that cannot be appealed. And the truth is arbitration can be binding or non-binding. Now we go to the sample case that use the alternative dispute resolution with case that we call adjudicative, that is arbitration. The chronology of the Pertamina versus Karaha Bodas case is used resolution with arbitrations. What is the problem? The problem is the cooperation between Pertamina and Karaha Bodas company. The development of geothermal energy began in the 17th century in the Kamojang area. At the time, Pertamina had just built it. Pertamina was one of the armed business countries that have the right to develop geothermal energy. Continue to try to develop this energy in 1994. Pertamina entered into a contract cooperation with private electricity investors, namely Karaha Bodas Corporations LLC. Below the joint operation contract that we call GOC, while PLN as the buyer will be under it energy sales contract that we call ESG with Karaha Bodas company. Pertamina and Karaha Bodas Corporation conducts geothermal energy development in Karaha, Bodas, Garut, and Telaga Bodas in Tasikmalaya. The background of the Pertamina and Karaha Bodas company problem case is due to the economic crisis and on the recommendation of the International Monetary Fund or IMF. However, based on President Decree number 5 years 1998, the project was again suspended. And on March 2002, the government through presidential decree intends to continue the project. Furthermore, it is also supported by decree of the Minister of Energy and Research Mineral and concerning the establishment of the Karaha PTLP project status from deferred to be forward. And finally, KBC entered on April 30, 1998, claim for damage to the Geneva arbitration in Switzerland in accordance with the venue selected by the para-GOC insiders. Nah, the Geneva Arbitral Tribunal on 18 December 2000 made education that Pertamina and PLN pay compensation to KBC. But with details, Pertamina must pay a fine calculated from the value compensations and loss of opportunity to gain profit, plus 4% annual interest since 2010. Pertamina and PLN subsequently violate their contractual obligations to KBC, although the dedication of the International Arbitration Body has been determined. Pertamina has refused to pay its legal obligations. In response to this, KBC made an effort in the form of a request to enforce the Geneva Arbitration Award in court several countries where Pertamina's assets, the goods are located, except in Indonesia, namely on February 21 in 2001, KBC requests the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Texas to enforce the Geneva Arbitration Award. And the next is the Hong Kong Court decided to grant KBC's bail confiscation application Pertamina's assets and property in Singapore. And in Singapore courts, KBC acts all the assets of its subsidiary Pertamina are in Singapore, including Petra. But on January 30, 2004, KBC asks a New York judge to hold assets Pertamina and the government of Indonesia up to 1,044 billion US dollar. The request rejected and the judge determined that Bank of America and Bank of New York releasing back $50 US million in funds to the Indonesian government, which is fixed on hold. This fund 15 adjudicate accounts in BOA of US is 296 million for guarantee dollar US. So, what is the arbitration as the alternative dispute resolutions is the options for dispute resolutions by arbitrations are intended by the parties to get fast, cheap, and effective dispute resolution. And even though the dedication of the International Arbitration Body has been determined, it is Pertamina has refused to pay its legal obligations. In response to this, KBC take legal action in the form of a request to implement an arbitration awards Geneva in the courts of several countries where Pertamina's assets and goods are located. Confidentially must be the characteristic of this arbitration so that they can resolve this dispute business resolution. Okay, I think that's all. This is about the sample case. I hope you guys can understand and you guys can be more added about knowledge about this arbitration, especially about alternative dispute resolution.